HealingYourself.Life provides information for awareness, educational, and support purposes only and does not diagnose or prescribe treatment for any medical condition. Viewers are encouraged to do their own due diligence and consult with their own medical caregivers before making personal treatment decisions. Welcome back to HealingYourself.Life. I'm your host, Dunagun Kaiser.
And I'm your host, Melody Kaiser.
And we're here with our off-grid Dr. Jay Nielsen M.D., as well as a nutritionist, Jack Grogan, to talk about how you can strengthen your immune system. Jack and Dr. Nielsen, thank you for joining us again here on HealingYourself.Life.
Glad to be here.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As always, I want to start out with something in the news, okay? Yesterday, this was in the Wall Street Journal. I actually picked it up off of the Drudge and went to the link. And we're now talking about this Chinese 5G EMF system for communication and all of the things that are involved. I understand that birds are flying past these cell towers and dropping dead out of the air. And this guy says this stuff is going to really kill us. And as Jack and I were talking before we started, what people don't understand is as we've gone from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, this is not an arithmetic event. It is logarithmic. This is not 20% more. This isn't twice more. This is a disastrous amount of more EMF that's going to be cooking us. And anybody wants to write their congressman, fire away. Okay? Let me give us a little bit of background. The reason that I brought Jack today is multiple. First of all, it's one of my best friends. Jack and I have been practicing medicine together, consulting each other for 20 years. I could tell you funny stories about when we started that would amaze you, some really amazing stories. But when I talked to Dunagun about doing this series, I joked and said, we're going to do immunity. Do you spell that with one M or two? This is not my strength, okay? Jack would be glad to tell you this is not one of my fields. And so it is one of Jack's fields, and that's why we brought him in today. I want to keep this real simple. It's real easy to get into the weeds on immunity. Okay, there's a bunch going on out there and a lot of rabbit holes to go down. I'm going to stay simple and I'm going to do what I usually do and show you some pictures, okay? The immune system problems can be listed as it's overwhelmed by too many invaders, it's become weakened and vulnerable to attack, it's been misprogrammed and lost its ability to identify the invaders, that would be Lyme disease, okay, or mutated cells, that would be cancer, okay. It's become misprogrammed and is being mistakenly identifying healthy cells as the enemy, that would be Candida causing joint pain, or Candida looking like lupus, and the immune system is compromised or missing from a key component from birth, that would be all the genetic disorders that are immune. And what they've really left out of here is compromised genetic system that's being caused by radiation, EMF, endocrine disruptors, etc. Okay. Everybody wants to talk about what can I do to improve my immune system? Wrong question. Okay. That is not what we want to do. The question we want to talk about, and it's what we talk about all the time, is the fact that we want to talk about what we can do to quit hurting our immune system, because that's all we do. Everything about our life is about screwing up our immune system, and then everybody wants to take some mushrooms while they do something terrible to themselves. I'm going to do a short list. We're going to come back to this list in detail. Don't take cortisone. Cortisone turns your immune system off. Okay. Chemotherapy. You want to watch your immune system be altered for life for like 5 different reasons. Chemotherapy for cancer does that. And you've heard me say before, I'm not universally opposed to chemotherapy. I just think it's overused. Okay. Don't collect heavy metals. Don't use aluminum deodorant. Don't put fillings in your teeth. Don't get vaccinations. Those things are all going to the very center of the fact that your very biochemistry is being turned off. Don't live under a cell tower. Don't do 5G. Don't do 4G. Don't do 3G. Don't do Wi-Fi. Don't have range extenders. Don't play with the EMF. It's dangerous. Okay? avoid artificial foods, starting with GMO, okay? And so it's important to recognize that if you're going to go out and try and figure out all these things you can take to fix your immune system, it's kind of stupid if you put an endocrine disruptor in the shape of a Christmas tree hanging off of your mirror. Okay? Vaccinations are a mixed bag. Okay? Vaccinations can improve your immune system. Focally, one problem. Globally, a little bit. There's a little bit of research that repetitive flu vaccines, back when they were inequality, do generally improve your immune system, but mostly they're full of metals. Okay? But when you get done, the real problem is, and this we're going to get into Jack's material at the end when we talk about this, is it doesn't make any difference what you do to your immune system if you have hypometabolism. If you're running a slow metabolism, nothing's happening. Your cellular mechanism is not working. The reishi mushroom that you took didn't do anything because there was no wheels of energy to deal with it. And so we really need to go back and go, don't be menopausal, don't be hypothyroid, and don't have heavy metal toxicity, and we're back to that. Okay?
For those people who do have hypothyroidism and Lyme, like we were having, so it has lowered our immune system, are you going to get into also talking about, or maybe that'll be Jack's specialty, is talking about how do we build our immune system? Or
I'm not going to get into fixing thyroid,
Okay.
and I'm not going to fix into hormone replacement because we'll make a reference to the names of the videos we've done in the past to cover that in detail.
Right.
I just want to go, don't overlook this stuff and leave it there, okay? When we get done, we want to do two kinds of things that improve our immune system. And one of the things we want to do is the specific things, which I'm leaving to Jack since I think immunity is spelled with one M. And the generic things you can do that are upregulators. The whole NRF2 stimulator with Protandim. The more I use this product, the more impressed that I am. Okay? We could do a 3-hour series on probiotics. And obviously the whole central issue of what we're doing here is going to eventually descend into probiotics, okay? I'm not going to go into homeopathics or essential oils, and we could spend an hour on that, okay? And really, we probably ought to. We really haven't done that, and we ought to go back, and I consider those two to be the same. They're both physiologic levels of endocrine upregulators that are making cellular level changes, not at pharmacologic doses. The difference being when you take 800 milligrams of Motrin, you're cascading your system with an enzyme poison. When you're taking a homeopathic, you're taking something that is just nudging at the same concentration as other things inside your cells, not pharmacologic doses, okay? And then when you get done, I can't get through any lecture, especially this one, without talking about Lyme disease. And I'm not going to talk about Lyme disease. We have a very long video on it, okay? What you're not being told about Lyme disease, okay? And all I want to say in Lyme disease is it illustrates something. It illustrates the fact that what's going on in Lyme, if you talk to Lyme patients, they very rarely get colds or illnesses, okay? And the reason is their immune system is not damaged. It's upregulated and hypervigilant, and it's so busy trying to deal with the Lyme that it can't kill that it finds everything else in its life easy to manage. And so we don't want to just get into the mode that the immune system is suppressed. We want to get into the fact that the immune system is distracted. This goes back, and then I'm going to have Jack comment on this one. The most popular supplement in Germany for the last 50 years is echinacea. And more people die from allergy to echinacea than automobile accidents in Germany in the 90s. Yeah, it's an amazing antigenic product. And I never really saw any research that was done with echinacea alone. It was always done with vitamin C. And you couldn't separate the vitamin C from the echinacea. And I always had the feeling that what echinacea was doing was increasing the tendency to get your immune system to look at viral activity to the exclusion of looking at cancer, viruses, fungus, etc. So my concern was people who are taking echinacea every day are making a mistake.
There's a number of things about that. There's some recent research now out of Australia that shows that, in fact, echinacea has benefits, antibacterial benefits, for example.
Like
And
olive leaf.
Olive leaf, I think, is a little bit better, though, in
Right.
fact, in a number of ways. The other thing about echinacea, though, and we've known this for quite some time, it seems to work best if you take it cyclically. And
Not
if it's
continuously.
3 weeks on, X weeks off, and so on, it is a very good antiviral. So, in fact, initially, if it was used for acute intervention in viral type illnesses, and in fact, still is used worldwide for that. The part of the problem was, though, over time, this goes back to the kind of the original premise here. People wanted to improve their immune system rather than remove barriers. So they took it on a regular basis over time, and they became hypersensitized to it, especially some of the impure forms of it. Now there's a company.
Is that the allergies?
Yes, exactly. Yes. However, there's a really good company in Australia that manufactures herbal products to a pharmaceutical standard, and they are very, very good at eliminating potential allergens and concentrating the actives.
Who's the company?
It's called Metaherb, MEDI HERB.
I remember seeing it.
And they did do a fantastic job there. Their quality is unsurpassed, and small doses work very well for them. Now, having said that, just recently I had a chance to listen to a speaker that mentioned that in the most recent research out of Metaherb, they thought that low-dose echinacea over long periods of time may actually be beneficial in immune-compromised patients. However, that did not include people taking big doses for an acute episode and then continuing those acute doses for long periods of time. In fact, what they did like to do with that, and almost always you saw this in combination, was combining echinacea with andrographis, for example, where andrographis can be used for long periods of time. In fact, one of the protocols was to use echinacea for a 3-week period, andrographis for a 6-week period, then echinacea for 3 and andrographis for 6, and so on. And in a way that kind of gave people the best of all worlds with it.
My one question would be, like, I've always heard that echinacea you should always use intermittently, talking to an herbalist. So are these people who were taking it long term, were they not talking to an herbalist about that?
This was the 90s.
Yeah,
People were just
it's a lot
self-medicating.
different now.
Okay.
There's a lot more knowledge, but I mean, a lot of people died from doing this.
Yeah.
It
And I
was
guess
a
that's
bad utilization.
Right, the importance of either talking to a nutritionist or a very good doctor who knows about herbs,
Right.
rather than trying to do it on your own.
Yes. The quality is so much better now. Well, I'm going to say this and then qualify it. The quality among the companies that are really good is so much better now than it was. Now, having said that, there's so many more companies trying to jump on the bandwagon now.
A lot of junk out there.
Yeah, you've got to really be careful. You have to really be careful, and this goes back to what gets tested. The raw material gets tested, end product gets tested, actives get tested, and as I said, Metaherb is probably at the top, at the forefront for that. They do just an outstanding job. I had a conversation with a client of mine actually who lives in New Zealand, and we were talking about an issue they had, and since it's an Australian company, I mentioned they also have multiple products, and I mentioned to him that there was a really good one for what he was interested in, and it was readily available in New Zealand. So, it's a very good company. They have, and again, they manufacture to pharmaceutical standards. In fact, actually,
Let me throw this question at you. Given head-to-head competition between Seagate's olive leaf, the people who invented it, and Metaherb's echinacea, which would you use?
Well, they're both really. I'd probably use them both, but in different ways.
Okay.
So the other thing with olive leaf's got tremendous benefits. Antivirals at the top of the list.
Right.
It's antibacterial. It has a stabilizing effect on blood pressure, and it's very cardio friendly. I mean, it's very supportive of cardiovascular health in a number of other ways as well. So you would use that a little bit differently. That's one of the ones you could cycle with echinacea, actually.
Well, the olive tree and the moringa tree are true miracle trees.
Yeah.
They both bring so many things to the table that you were never going to see from any place else. That it's remarkable. Let's go back to our basics here. So we want to improve immune function. I'm going to give you a short list. The first thing you want to do is you want to allow no chronic infection. Okay. They put in here, kill and destroy unfriendly invaders, okay? That's kind of generic. The person who is got chronic folliculitis in their skin and is fighting with the fact that they've acquired bacteria that they can't cope with really needs to go to someone who does non-antibiotic improvement of skin flora and get rid of that problem, okay? You don't want chronic tonsillitis. You want to use a nasoneb and non-absorbable antibiotics and hypertonic saline and nasal irrigation and get rid of your chronic sinusitis. You absolutely want to not allow any chronic infection because the whole time you're doing that, your immune system is going and it's not doing its job. Okay? The second thing you want to do is clean up your environment. You know, I tell the story about a friend of mine who had myasthenia gravis and walked into the bathroom at our church and fell over and missed 9 weeks of work because somebody put a Glade air freshener in the bathroom. And he never knew what happened to him. I figured it out later. And one room full of Glade air freshener completely shut his entire nervous system down. Okay? And we've done endocrine disruptors. The Dirty Dozen is what's on the front of the screen. Do you remember, Dunagun, what the name of the video was?
We'll put it in the description of this.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. You want to figure out your lifestyle choices because your lifestyle choices you have wrong are really hurting your immune system. Smoking, alcohol, artificial sweeteners, GMO, high insulin levels from excess carbohydrates, not having good healthy fats. You want to have some fun sometime. We ought to have Jack come back and we'll just do healthy fats. It's a whole, Jack and I've spent 2 hours on it. It's a lot of fun. Okay.
I think we should make that one a cooking show. That's what I
make that one a cooking show. That sounds fun. Okay. You cook, I'll come and eat. Okay. And so that gets me through the basics. The first thing that happened to me today, you all know how I do this. I get in Google Scholar and I start doing science research. In this case, I use Google Scholar to figure out how to spell immunity. Okay? And the minute I did that, I got the strangest list. I typed in immunity and I got herd immunity, adaptive immunity, cellular immunity, sovereign immunity, which is political, doesn't have anything to do with immunity, humoral immunity, protective immunity, vaccine immunity, and qualified immunity, which is probably legal again. Okay? And it really illustrated to me that since I couldn't define any of those, I was not qualified to do this lecture. Okay? By the way, immunity is spelled with 2 M's. I looked it up. Okay? And so I don't want to go into those weeds. Okay? I want to stay really basic. We started out with the following statement. Okay? My world always boils down to a very simple subject, and that is that if you've got the cortex of your brain talking to your pituitary and communicating with your end organs, then you're going to get your hormones into your cells. And when you do that, you're going to end up stabilizing thyroid, DHEA, progesterone, cortisol, testosterone, estrogen, pregnenolone. And this is where Jack and I live. Okay? This is what we do all day. And so the whole concept of slow metabolism is where we're going to end up at the end of this lecture. And so we're right here. Eat right, hydrate, okay?
When you're talking slow metabolism, because Jack, I know you said this before, there's two kinds of metabolisms, right? One that is the metabolism that takes out all the toxins, and ones that helps you not
That's slow
gain weight.
detoxification.
Okay, so
That can
there's
be a
difference.
part of it,
Okay.
but it's not. I'll give you an example. You can have a slow detoxification and be speeded up everywhere else.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
because there's mixed metabolic types too.
Right.
Where I'm talking about that person who is just idling all of their engines, and we're going to head there real quick here in the
That
next
would
few
be
minutes.
me. Dunagun is fast. I'm slow.
Yeah. There are all kinds of, when you start getting out in the weeds, there are a lot of really neat concepts that come up, and I'm going to throw them, I'm going to have these out of sequence. I'm going to change what I'm doing, and I'm going to go here, okay? We're talking about self and non-self. That's autoimmune disease, okay? Let me see how I did on my picture there. I look pretty good, okay? Structure of the immune system, immune cells, mounting immune response, immunity, natural and acquired, immunology and transplants, not going to bother with that, okay? The immune system and the nervous system, and we're going to kind of run down that list. This is the world's shortest course in immunity. This is what I know, okay? This is real basic stuff. You've got antigens that develop antibodies, okay? All of the surface proteins that are on your body are capable of genetically developing an antibody if they're seen as a foreign invader, okay? And so you have this entire process where what you're doing when you get a tetanus vaccine is you're being given an antigen that is stimulating an antibody response, right? And that is a sustained effect if it's designed correctly, okay? Easier to do with DNA vaccines than RNA vaccines, okay? Anatomically, these are all sites of where your immune system is. When you're young, your thymus gland is bigger than your heart, sitting there in your mediastinum below your thyroid and above your heart. By the time you're 10 years old, it's atrophied, okay? Your liver is 4 times bigger per body weight when you're a year old than you are as an adult. Your liver is virtually your entire abdomen in a newborn infant, okay? Your bone marrow is obviously huge, okay, because that's where all of your hematopoietic and white blood cells are being generated from that aren't T cells. Meanwhile, you have lymph nodes, each with specific purposes. You have lymph nodes in your armpits and your groin that are designed to filter things out and deal with them. But then you have lymph nodes like at the base of your appendix called the Peyer's patches, and those actually are antibody engines and are mass producers, okay? And then you have your tonsils and your adenoids, which very specifically are protecting your gastrointestinal and oral tract and are really working to make sure that you don't send things down the length of your GI tract. Lymph nodes are pretty simple. They have things coming in from the lymphatics, and then as the lymphatic system heads towards the heart, it keeps collecting. This is not like the venous tree where it's real easy to see. These are very fine hair-like structures, and they're critical for removing all of the toxins and all of the antigens and all of the infectious product that gets out of your cells into the spaces between your cells called your interstitial space. And interstitial fluid eventually finds its way to the lymphatics, okay?
Is that different from tissue fluid?
Well, it depends, because tissue includes everything, so it could also be intracellular and vascular. Okay, whereas interstitial is only the space between cells. Okay, and if we wanted to spend days on this, we could talk about T cells, and there are T cells and killer cells and all kinds of things. And I can spell T cells, so we're going to let that go. And that's as far as we're going to go. And when things go bad, this happens. And you get an antigen attached to an antibody, and that results in a very complicated complement cascade, that's the medical term, which eventually results in a T cell, a mast cell, many different kinds of cells releasing all kinds of terrible chemicals, that make you hurt and have dysfunction and inflammation. Okay? This all started from probably one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs in history, 1953 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine, and it went to Hans Adolf Krebs, a German, and his partner, who got no name in this, Fritz Albert Lippmann, so I'm going to give him the credit. And we went on to name the entire process of how the cell works. And this is the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle, very simply, there is no very simply to the Krebs cycle, is that you're going to take fats, carbohydrates, and protein, your food, and you're going to break it down into amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose, and you're going to use your vitamins and substrate surfaces to make acetyl-CoA, which then enters the second part of the Krebs cycle, which is the citric acid cycle. And in that cycle, I'm going to show you this in the next paper, you are going to have all kinds of cofactors that are required that if you don't have them, you won't have energy. Then it's going to turn into NADH. I'm not going to bother with the biochemistry. And it's going to turn into ATP. ATP is the energy of the body. When ATP releases a phosphate, it becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate, instead of adenosine triphosphate, and that's how we store energy in the body. And then we pick up that ADP, we take it back to the top of the Krebs cycle, and we start over again. Now, if we blow up the right side of the cycle, we see a bunch of arrows with lines across them, okay? And these are where mercury, arsenic, lead are all interfering with the Krebs cycle. And if you look at the little green circles, you're going to see that you are iron deficient, don't have B12, magnesium, manganese. All of these things are required for the Krebs cycle. This is the reason why yesterday I saw a lady who I gave 2 cc's of B12 and everything that was wrong with her went away. Just everything went away. This is 7% of my practice. You give them a B12 shot and they go, "What happened?" And I go, "I don't know. You have to go talk to Jack. He'll tell you why this is happening. I just figured out how to patch it."
My experience of that is about every month Melody telling me, "Have you been taking your B12 shots?" if I start forgetting things. And
Exactly. And it does nothing to me. Okay? Yeah, I always tell people, most people you give B12, you're not going to notice. Because if your system is running, it is, you're not going to make it run better by giving it more B12 when it has enough. It's only when it's being drawn down. We're going to take one of those little spots along the side of that circle and go, "Wow, this stuff's really complicated. I'm glad I've got Jack." Okay? And this is all about what B12 is doing to methylation along with tetramethylhydrofolate, the metabolized form of folic acid, to create that entire pathway right over my head. Okay? So we have lots of simple examples of things that are poisoning our Krebs cycle. Pesticides, okay, really screw up the immune system. We've seen this from me before. All the blue dots are doses of mercury in the childhood vaccination schedule. This is 2002. 2019 is double ugly. Okay?
So just for the BHIP, so I have to understand, make sure everybody else can as well. We were talking about not interfering with your immune function, but you were talking about the Krebs cycle primarily being like an energy producing cycle. So what does energy producing have to do with the immune system?
The immune system needs energy to function.
Okay.
In fact, every cell in our body needs
slow
energy to
metabolism
function.
again.
Okay.
So if you do anything that interferes with the body's ability to produce ATP, the Krebs cycle in other words, you're suppressing energy availability in every cell in the body, and in particular the immune system.
Right. The immune system is so energy dependent because of its high level of complexity. It's the first thing, like the brain, high level of complexity, to be injured. Okay? When you take an organ that has one thing to do, the kidney, okay? Man, we can actually run poisons right through the kidney, and the kidney goes, "I eat that for breakfast, no problem." Okay? The heart's hard to kill. Right? The heart's really hard to kill. It really is. You got to do terrible things to the heart. The heart will look good the day you're 85 years old, even though you smoked and drank and did all kinds of things. It's really a pretty durable organ, okay? As long as you don't eat a lot of carbs, okay? There are organs out there that just shrug things off. Skin, really good at toxins, really good at being hypometabolic. It just dries up a little bit, but keeps doing its job. It's still a barrier. But the immune system, when it runs out of energy, goes, I'm off. I am not going to do this. And you're going to get sick. Okay? So all of these vaccines, and we have an entire 1-hour series on vaccines. Just if you put me in and type in vaccines, it's going to come up. Okay?
Yes, FDA doc, you need to know this about vaccines.
Right. Okay. And these are the adult vaccines that are recommended. And other than tetanus, I don't have any of them that I recommend. Okay. And so a lot of good basic science has already proved this. This was a study from UC Davis out in California, and they looked at giving vaccinations to mice and then measured their immune system. Okay. And it was catastrophic information. Absolutely catastrophic information. It just shut the whole system down. We're going to get back to Jack. This is where you're over my head. When I started doing integrative medicine in 1993 down in Bluffton, all my people were walking in with a hair analysis from the chiropractor. And I have hair analysis from my patients in my chart going back almost 30 years now, okay? And probably the most common what I saw is trace elements. Not a bad company. This is the one Andy liked, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay. And because my partner really liked Great Smokies, I saw these, okay? And real famous, lots of them walk through my door every day from chiropractors, doctors' data, okay? But when you look at all of them, they have 3 components that, in my learning from Jack, are leaving the story short. And one of them is that they're doing absence or presence. They're not putting it in a middle range for normal function. The second thing is that they're not dealing with the ratios. And when you look at the trace minerals they analyze, they leave some key trace minerals out of their analysis. And so when I came to Toledo 20 years ago, I started seeing these because people who go to Jack go to me. And I started seeing this hair analysis. A very different piece of information, and I'll leave this to Jack and he can use it. But now what we see is toxic metals and what's in the category of additional minerals, which strontium is critical to me. And now you'll notice that normal is the center of the standard deviation line, and a normal person heads to the middle, and you can be above or below it, not just in one direction, which is what TE and doctors' data report. And you have ratios of key minerals. And when you have all of that information and someone who knows how to interpret that, Jack, I want that, okay? You start seeing things like this. Everything is below the line. This is slow metabolism, okay? The minute that you have slow metabolism, the rest of this report becomes less accurate because you have to have metabolism in order to generate an accurate hair analysis.
Could we take just a moment and explain why hair analysis? What is it that hair analysis is intending for us to...
I'm done.
Find?
Go ahead, Jack.
What is it that... It's not at all obvious to the average person if you're having immune issues or if you're having energy issues. Why the heck would you look at your hair? What's going on with that?
Well, if you look at, let's say, a blood draw and look at the minerals in the blood, you're seeing what's available to the tissue, essentially what's circulating around. When you look, and that's valuable, by the way. When you look at urine tests, you're looking at excretion, which is also valuable.
Trash, valuable, but trash.
Yep.
Right.
When you look at hair, you're looking at what minerals are actually available to the cells of the body at that time. And it's usually looked at over a 2 to 4 month period, unless something's changed over time that would influence that. Now, because the studies on hair analysis go back a long, long way. And when they looked at the confidence levels for a particular mineral, what was looked at was the level of the mineral in the primary storage area of the body. I'll give you a good example is copper, because the gold standard for hair testing is actually copper. And most copper stores in the liver. When they took a look at the level of copper in the liver and copper in the hair, the correlation was 99.49s behind it.
And blood was inverted.
Blood is very capricious. Serum copper means almost nothing. Right. In fact, a really good example of that was years ago when people went in the emergency room with a heart attack. Blood tests were drawn and so on. And back in the day, they used to measure copper levels. And what they found was the copper levels during an MI were elevated. They assumed copper caused MIs.
Myocardial infarction?
I'm sorry, yes. A heart attack, yes. Sorry. Now, what they assumed was that was a cause. It was the effect. Because what happened is cardiac cells die, they release those ions into the blood, and copper is a major one. It gives a lot of integrity to the blood vessels. It's important for cardiac cell integrity and so on. So when you look at where these minerals are stored and where they're metabolically the most active, the hair reflects those levels at a very, very high level of confidence. In fact, there's none of the minerals that we check for that don't have a confidence level of at least 90% or higher. Years ago, I had a conversation with, I won't name the lab, but a major lab in Southern California. And you already know this story. And he were talking about blood chemistries and hair tests and so on. And he said to me, he said, the horror stories I could tell you about blood tests. He said, they're very easy to screw up. And he said, we have at least a 10% rate of not a failure rate, but a rate where the values aren't what they should be, that they're inaccurate.
Lab error.
Lab errors, yes, thank you. And the other thing was that he was saying that, to do a hair sample, it's difficult to screw it up. I suppose you could drop the test tube once you dissolve the hair in nitric acid, but other than that, it's going to be a very accurate read.
And it's important to realize here why this is true. When you're doing a test on blood, okay, you're not doing an intracellular test. Okay, you're doing a serum test. You're outside the cells. You're in the interstitial fluid. When you're in the urine, you're doing the trash. When you're doing venous blood, you're doing blood after it left the cells. So you're trying to figure out what the truck's carrying on the way back, what the truck was carrying after it emptied. The arterial blood would be much better blood tests, but we don't have any normals for that. Okay, hair is live cell. It's intracellular analysis. You're taking off the scales, getting down to the core of the hair, and then you're standardizing the amount of that hair and measuring the amount of minerals that's inside cells. That's really important to understand about hair analysis.
Is it because the hair follicle cells that actually create the hair itself have those minerals available to them, and so they
do. They bind to the proteins, to the keratin proteins. They're essentially binding proteins for these minerals.
It reminds me of science movies in high school where they do core drilling in the Arctic. Ice,
yeah.
And they say, we can tell there was more carbon dioxide in that.
That's exactly right.
10,000 years ago, because we went down there and we found that it was there.
And remember, you can also do your fingernails, you can do pubic hair, okay? It's any keratinous material that's being excreted from the body. And we have people who are bald or have alopecia totalis, and Jack just has them save their fingernails until they get the right weight.
Essentially the same tissue. In fact, some of the original studies done in hair analysis in the federal penitentiaries were for violent felons. They were looking for common denominators. Was done with toenails. So,
and Jack's going to do my fish scale on my fish that I'm growing in Haiti and improve my growth factors. Right? Okay? This is really a very basic concept that's been lost by medicine.
Okay.
Wow.
And when we look at this, and Jay made a really good point here, when you have a metabolism that's gone hypometabolic on the slow side, not producing energy, the biggest thing but you'll get markers for it in the hair test. The biggest thing on there is that when you look at their toxic patterns may not tell you the whole story. So the level of toxicity that you would see, and remember, every one of those toxics are immunosuppressors and Krebs Cycle suppressors, that the toxic levels that you see in what we call a slow metabolic type, those are only the levels that their bodies can actively process, given as slow as they are at that time. That's why on subsequent tests, so when people will do a retest, for example, and they could have, say, a low level of aluminum on the first test, and on the second test, the aluminum, in fact, sometimes it shoots up, other times it's just considerably higher. And that's because it was in the tissue, and we can tell when the metabolism is getting better. When the metabolism shows signs of getting better.
And that's slow metabolism, and 3 years later, all of the bars have gone up.
And the red ones are the ones that are...
The red is the result.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is the amount of heavy metals. This man was very sick. And the amount of heavy metals in this man was not obvious from his original hair test. Jack has ways of telling me that from secondary information where I only can read what we call the Cutler numbers. And when we got his metabolism up, it was a completely different hair test.
And people notice the difference. They're better. They're healthier. Their immune systems function better. They're not coming down with as many things as a result of that. When metabolic types were first identified...
Sorry to interrupt, but I was just wondering, how do we get the metabolism to work better?
Depends on where you are to begin with.
Okay.
So if you're a slow metabolic type, typically what you see is a low sodium and a low potassium in the hair test. Now, sodium relates to the adrenal glands. So you want to improve adrenal function. You want to make sure that you're well hydrated, that you have plenty of salt, that vitamin C, red meat, the B vitamins, especially pantothenic acid. In fact, it's kind of interesting if you look at the research studies on pantothenic acid, B5 that is, in the immune system, that they're somewhat ambiguous. Some studies show there's an improvement, some show there's none at all. Well, the improvements, I would be willing to bet, all came in hypometabolic metabolisms, those that needed more adrenal help. And the other thing that you see is low potassium. So you have to make sure, not so much with a lot of fruit, especially high glycemic or high sugar fruits, but plenty of vegetables. Vegetables improve potassium levels. And the other trick here with this is that you can use, for example, one mineral to help another one go higher or lower. So sometimes if someone is low in zinc and they're also low in potassium, but let's say they're potassium intolerant. I've got clients, and Jay has patients, that even though they need potassium, when they try to take even high potassium foods, they have heart arrhythmias from it. Yes.
Yes.
So what you can do then is a couple ways. One is the mineral zinc helps the body hold on to potassium inside the cell better. So you get potassium to go up by just giving zinc. Now, interestingly, zinc is one of the most studied minerals in immune function. Right. And part of it is because it helps people become more, you don't want them hypermetabolic either, but they become more balanced in terms of their metabolism.
Which is why zinc makes eczema go away.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. As long as the zinc isn't suppressing copper too much. Because there's a balance there too. It's a puzzle. You got to put it all together.
Okay.
And that's what makes it difficult sometimes when people read an article about this supplement or that supplement or this mineral or that mineral or vitamin. It's like the vitamin of the week almost, and say, well, this sounds good. I should start taking it. Yeah. And some people will feel a lot better. They feel great on it. Others will say, well, I don't really feel that good. And it's because of how the metabolisms are to begin with. When you look at metabolisms, and if you go back to the original work on this, 47 different types of metabolisms were identified. And we've been able to pare that down now to about 8. There's 4 fast and 4 slow, essentially. It's because there was so much overlap between them. But people assume automatically that slow metabolisms are bad and fast is good. Hypometabolic is bad. So the hypometabolic slows, that's not so good. The hypermetabolic types, That's not so good either.
They're like, that's like spinning your tires. It looks like you're moving, but you're just making smoke.
And they're in trouble fast.
They get in trouble real
They're
fast.
the ones that are symptomatic very quickly.
They have a lot of drug reactions.
oh,
My
yeah.
gosh. Everything you do to them goes haywire.
Overreactive to everything.
This is the reason why I've stopped. I take all of I make one try at a patient to make them better. And if I pretty much get a nice feedback at visit 2 and everything's going fine, I go, okay, I'm with it, okay? And I move Jack back to about visit 5, okay? But if I get to visit 2 and nothing's working right, I stop and I go, I need a hair analysis. And then I let Jack work on it for a while, and they come back, and things Jack does is slow. It takes time, okay? And they'll come back to me after 3 or 4 months and go, I'm really starting to feel better. And now I go back and I take my bright idea that backfired and I do it, and now it works. Same thing. And now it works, okay? And the reason is because everything was kludged up. And that's why I tell people, if you want to have a new and innovative look at the way that the body works and understand, especially if you're someone that nothing seems to be going right and you're kind of stuck and no, the doctors aren't having any luck, I'd go have Jack Grogan do a hair analysis, okay, and see what Jack says about it. And you get this very nice 1-hour discussion of everything that's happening, with what's happening with your biochemistry, that you can walk away with that information and apply it and work on it, and he stays available to keep fine-tuning that stuff. And he works the same way I do as a primary care clinician, but his entire purpose is detoxification, improving metabolism and metabolic rate, stabilizing adrenals, and lowering inflammation. People say, oh, hair analysis tells me all kinds of things. I go, hair analysis tells me 4 things, okay? Everything is through those 4 pathways. When you watch, Jack is trying to fix 4 things. Stabilize adrenals, detoxify, get rid of that inflammation, and fix that metabolism.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay? And once that I finally quit seeing it as it's highly complicated. Okay? It's taken me years to know about 3% of what Jack knows on hair analysis. But that 3% has completely transformed my practice. It's changed everything. When I get stuck, I don't get stuck anymore.
That just makes me think about how many people see doctors. They're trained, they're educated, they're good intentioned, but they're not getting the results. And the people go from doctor to doctor, and they're not getting the benefit of these insights that could be underlying a lot of the barriers to improving or suggesting a different approach would be appropriate.
Yeah, when you look at it too, it's not something that's typically looked at on a regular basis. So they don't have really any. I guess maybe the closest thing would be red blood cell magnesium, for magnesium levels. But other than that, it would be biopsies, pretty much. And that's why, it's relatively speaking, the hair is inexpensive. It's tested inexpensive. You get a lot of value, a lot of information from it. You get the results back in a few weeks. It doesn't take a long time. And honestly, it gives you information you can't get any other way. I mean, the number of times over the years that Jay and I have found clients or patients of his whose thyroids were normal values in the blood, but were functionally hypo. And Jay is one of the few doctors that have the courage to say, okay, let's go ahead and treat this.
The Miller kid.
Oh my gosh.
We're way back. This isn't the way back machine. I barely know Jack. And I've got this kid, and he's not going to school, okay? He is absolutely dead tired, and all he wants to do is play hockey. He loves it when he goes to school and he makes it, but every day by 10 o'clock he's home. And his mom's in my office, and mom's going to Jack. And Jack is doing everything he can to get mom to go, this kid is hypothyroid. And I'm looking, and all of his thyroid levels and TSH and everything are right in the middle of normal. Okay, and so Jack and I are barely on each other's radar screen at that point in time. Okay, this is 2 years into us knowing each other, and we're barely working together. And And Mom says, would you talk to Jack? And I said, no, I'll give him a call. And Jack says, I'd really like you to try putting him on some T3 thyroid in just a few days and just see whether or not it makes any difference. Okay? So Mom said, I'd really like this test to be really accurate. He takes all of Jack's supplements. He doesn't look at them. He just gobbles them. I'm just going to throw his thyroid in the morning. We're not going to tell him. Okay?
Single
And
blind study.
I said, I like it, single blind study. Okay? And so this happens, and he goes off to school, and he gets off the bus at 3:30 and tells his mom, I wish I could have that day every day. And she says, well, we can only hope. And we keep going on, and he keeps going to school. He never misses school again. Okay? And after a couple weeks, I said, let's check some thyroid levels. And we go get thyroid levels, and what do you think happened to his thyroid levels? They all went down. Everything dropped into abnormal. His TSH went up, and I called up Jack, and I went, what are you doing to my patient? And he said, making progress. He says he now has the metabolism to generate results. He says he needs more thyroid. You now have accurate blood tests. Chase them the way you do and get them balanced. And so we took him up from 30 milligrams of Armor to 60 milligrams. This kid probably weighed 110, okay? Because, come on, he's 12 years old, okay? And he's doing great. And I do lab on him one day, and his T3 is too high, and his TSH is too low. And Jack says, start taking him off. And we marched him off over the next 6 months, off of thyroid, and he never needed thyroid again.
Huh.
And he stayed well. He was trapped in a hypometabolic state. What he was really trapped in was the hands of an ignorant physician who had no idea what metabolism means.
Right.
And send him to any endocrinologist in the United States, and they're going to look at his TSH and T4, not even look at a T3, and say, you're good. Well, it didn't turn out to be true of Mr. Miller. And I went, so I don't trust any of my tests. And Jack said, not much. No, not much, you don't. I got to tell you another Jack story, okay? This is the story, and then we're going to quit, okay? This story absolutely has been repeated 1,000 times by me. I had this kid. He was actually the son of my wife's office manager, and he had gone into liver failure, and he had been 29 days in intensive care at the local university, and they finally sent him home to die. And I've got him, last patient of the night, because he's an add-on in my office. He had normal bilirubin is less than 1. He was 39. He was yellow as a lemon. He was covered in scales. His skin was covered in fungus. He was losing weight. He had no digestion at all. And his liver enzymes were through the ceiling. And he's dying. And I got nothing. And I'm now about 4 years into knowing Jack, and I've decided Jack's the smartest man in the world, and when I'm in trouble, I'm going to call him. I've changed my view. Mr. Miller has made me go, okay, I'm going to call Jack, okay? And I call Jack, and I go, tell Jack just about as much as I just gave you. No specifics at all. And Jack says, it's the only time I've ever seen Jack showboat. He said, you want me to tell you his lab? And I said, yeah. And he said, he's got no DHEA, he's got no testosterone, he's got no magnesium, his potassium is down. You're surprised that his bilirubin is a 50-50 split. It's neither conjugated or unconjugated, it's equal. And I said, oh my gosh, Jack, that's incredible. What's he got? And he says, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? And he says, I just gave you all the side effects of taurine depletion. He says, you've got taurine in the office. Put an IV in him and give him 1,000 milligrams. Or here's 1,000 or 10,000? 1,000.
Oh, in the IV?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we went high. We went 10.
10,000.
Yeah.
10,000 milligrams of taurine IV. And so I said, what the heck? Jack said it, we do it. So I put a butterfly in him, hang this 50 cc IV with this 10 cc's of taurine in it, which I had in the office for things Jack had taught me. And he's sitting there about 3 minutes later, and he's going, looking at his hands and flexing his fingers. And I said, are you okay, Nick? And he said, how fast could this IV work? And I said, got no idea why. And he said, I feel like wellness is going through me.
Oh my God.
So I called Jack up after half an hour, and I said, he feels better. And he said, do another lab in the morning. His bilirubin was 39. It had done nothing but go up for a year. The next morning it was 16. And we still, to this day, don't know what he had. We have a theory, okay? It's something genetic, okay? And he went on to develop heart disease and diabetes and really has a lot of genetic abnormalities. And he went on to have 4 more of these spells over the next 15 years, and each one was shorter and milder than the last one. They went away. Well, there's this disorder called remember it started with B?
Yeah, I don't recall it.
And
now.
we got this information from a big hepatologist down in Cincinnati who thought he knew what it was. And he said, everybody who gets this dies when he's 10. And he got it when he was 21. So he was a mild case, and then because he lived through the first one, they got smaller. It really helps to know biochemistry. And I really didn't study they didn't teach biochemistry in medical school, in my opinion. They taught pharmacology, and I'm a good pharmacologist, okay? But they didn't teach us any biochemistry. And having somebody who actually knows what all of the amino acids and trace minerals and biochemical things do, change your world.
Has medical education caught up? Are they teaching this now?
No.
Probably not.
No, I don't think so. I think, if anything, I think medical education is less thorough. I think that it's more paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. I think true research is taking a back seat. I think it's more dangerous to be countercultural now. I think it's easier to lose your job. I mean, when I entered FDA research in 1982, I thought it was a pretty good field. I felt that I was studying blood pressure drugs and being asked to look for safety and efficacy. When I was fired as a whistleblower in 93, almost every study I was doing, I was embarrassed to be involved in and felt like I was being manipulated, and that's why I became a whistleblower, and that's why I got fired from the business. And so, no, I think things are getting worse, which is sad. I think it's also never going to help. I spend an hour with new patients, sometimes an hour and a half. I spend 30 minutes with follow-up visits, and the average primary care clinician has seen 7 people an hour. And that means that they've got 9 minutes, and they've got to spend 4 minutes punching radio buttons to get paid because they need to get up to a level 3 visit. And if you don't punch enough radio buttons in your iPads, you don't get paid. And so they're down to 4 minutes to hear what you have is wrong with you, make a decision, ask questions, and develop a differential diagnosis. I'm having a hard time doing it in 30. I'm going to have a hard time doing it in an hour. And they're now down to doing it in 4 minutes. I'm not seeing this working out. And we talked about that with our last talk, about the fact that the management is go back to cash, get the insurance company out of the game, and get back to the point where you give all of your money to the doctor, don't give a third of it to the insurance company, okay? And you don't make him do paperwork so that he spends 100% of his time taking care of you. Welcome to my practice. Right?
Yeah.
Jack, are you in any kind of association with other like-minded people who are aware of biochemistry, other nutritionists that could, if viewers, want to find out and reach, just like when we were talking about Lyme disease, you talked about iLabs and they can find a Lyme literate MD that way. Otherwise, they're all going to come running at you, and that can be overwhelming. But is there any other association or a group that people can reach out to?
I'm trying to think of the best ones. There's a really good nutrition group out of, I think they're in Addison, Texas. The acronym is IAACN. I think it's the International and American Association of Clinical Nutritionists. If you just Google IAACN.
These are the guys that you go to those big meetings back and come back and tell me stuff?
Yes.
Those
yeah,
guys.
they have a really good one.
The guys that if they had a referral system, that would be a bunch of bright guys.
I think they do, actually.
I
think they do, yes. Mm-hmm.
My answer would be no. Having been out there, I think he's unique.
You rely on Jack as your,
Jack
point of escalation for these
I haven't found anybody who knows.
Okay, well, we'll make sure and include contact information.
Right, exactly.
So if you want to reach out. And hair analysis is something that can be done remotely, right?
Absolutely.
Mail an envelope.
Just mail it in.
Yeah. Any given day, half the people I talk with are from out of town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Well, guys, this has been very eye-opening, and I mean, both it gives us hope, but it also gives us pain and distress about how many things we've missed in our own lives, how many things people that we love have missed, and you just know that this is widespread lack of awareness. So hopefully this will help to address some of that awareness, and we'll just keep marching forward. So folks, if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to leave comments under the video. Otherwise, we'll put contact information for these gentlemen as
And I would also add, I'd like to get some feedback. Jack and I lectured the first Wednesday of every month for 2 hours for years and years, okay? And I only did it because it let me be with Jack and learn everything he knows. And it wasn't about the people in the crowd. I just wanted to get together with Jack and have him criticize all my slides, you know. And so, you know, we've been doing these talks for a long time. And I'd like to get some feedback on whether or not people think watching Jack and I interplay is productive. Because if it is, I'd sure like to invite Jack back more. The other thing that we talked about tonight that I'd like to eventually get some feedback on is I'd like to find some traditional physicians who are open-minded, and I would like to have some panel discussions in which we could bring in a traditional oncologist and Jack and me and try and get some commonality. Now, you got to pick your people well. They've got to be open-minded. If they want to have a fight, it ain't going to work. May never show the video, okay? But if I could find the right people, Jack and I know how to play that game. We know how to be nice to people. Collaborative work.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be really interesting to see what happens when we see if we can develop a common language. And I'd like to see something down that path. And so, to a large degree, I'm trying to figure out how we can get further into the people who are only doing traditional medicine and meet them partway.
Basically build a functional partnership of collaboration that spreads
I'd like
that
to see
awareness.
it. I'd like to see it.
And we can be part of that. So guys, when you reply to this video, please also mention in your comments if you'd like to see that kind of a panel combining conventional medical providers as well as these integrative folks. And if you can help support at patreon.com/healingyourself, it will allow us to do things like add a green screen here, get an extra chair, and so forth, so we can actually have a proper place to have pull a panel together where we can get these recordings done.
Yep.
Sounds great. Thank you guys
Great.
very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Hey, HealingYourself.Life viewers.
We need your help in enabling us to continue to create great health videos for you.
So please support our mission by going to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledging any monthly amount you can.
Your pledge will also help us to afford a new Lyme peptide treatment therapy to improve our memory, and we will report on our progress to benefit you and others.
So remember, go to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledge today.
Were you going to tell them to go to patreon.com/healingyourself to pledge to help our memory treatment?
I thought I did. I'll do it. So please go to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledge today.
Thanks.